Hello, good morning, good afternoon, actually, everybody. Happy Friday. We welcome you to our webinar, Is Your Website Awesome Sauce? Or just me? So I have to give Joe and the team at Yoko some credit for that. I'm your host today. I'm Alex Held. I'm with BizLaunch, Arlington Economic Development Small Business Division. And I am pleased to introduce our colleague here, Ray Van Hilst, who is a results-driven web strategist with 20+ years of experience helping clients leverage marketing technologies to drive results. In this kind of COVID era and everything going on, we really want our, making sure our website is doing something for us and for our businesses is of utmost importance. So we're pleased to have him today. And before I turn it over, I wanted to talk a little bit about some housekeeping items. So if you feel free to drop any questions you may have in the question box during the program. But towards the end, we'll also take people off mute. So if you'd like to ask a question toward the end of the program, just raise your hand and I'll take you off mute and we will go from there. So without further ado, I'd like to kick it over to Ray. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. And everyone should be seeing my screen now. And I'll go ahead and put this in present mode. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for one of my favorite topics. Is your website awesome sauce or just meh? And it's one of the things we want to talk about. We're going to talk about today. It's just remembering that it might be your website, but this really is your users' experience as they take a look at your site. As Alex said, my name is Ray Van Hilst. I'm Director of Client Results with Yoko CO. We are organization. We are a digital marketing agency. We work with organizations that are motivated with a mission beyond profit, and our key goal is to help organizations, businesses, nonprofits, associations, healthcare leverage their websites for a greater impact. And our goal today is to help you make a great impact with your website. So as we dive into this, I want to start off with a few questions. So we're going to play 20 questions to get this started. So get your fingers ready and open up your chat windows because I'm going to pull chat up. I want to see some answers coming in. So first things first, throw some answers in here in the chat for me. How many websites do you all individually, how many websites do you use on any given day? And which ones? What are some popular ones? I mean, admit to me, it's okay. Your boss isn't here. You can admit, yeah, I looked at Facebook and Instagram today. I read the Washington Post. Anyone in the chat? Joe says he's used 20+ websites. Yeah, he's my biz dev guy. I hope he's using a lot of them. He should be getting out there. Anyone else? Don't make me call on you. Salesforce, Instagram, TikTok, enjoying TikTok while we can. Yep, I like that.
Looks like Robbie uses
Robbie says 15, ESPN, awesome. Okay, so lots of websites that we're using. If you think about it, particularly now that we're all at home, all of our work is online. We're looking at websites all day long. We're reading the news, we're doing our banking. Everything is through a website. Okay, now here's my follow-up question from that. How often do you actually look at your own website? I'll be honest. I looked at our website for the first time in about 3 weeks this morning as I was getting ready and pulling some things together for the website, for this webinar. And it's important to take a look, take a look at your own site. And what we're going to talk about today is how do you look at your website through your user's experience, not your own, and then how do you make sure it's really effective for them? Okay. So let's go ahead and dive into this a little bit and talk about some of my most fun things that we want to go about. Let's talk about why this matters, first of all. So like I say all the time, more people will use your website on a daily basis than do anything else with you. Anything else. Think about it. If you want to go to a restaurant, you look at the menu, what do you pull? You pull up their website, you look at the menu, and you take a look at that information. If you've got a phone call from someone, a business opportunity, you check out their website. If you're a foundation or a nonprofit and you're doing some fundraising, people look at your website. So it's the number one thing, particularly since we can't all meet face-to-face right now, okay? The other reason this matters is that some small improvements in your usability in your site can increase your usability. And that's ultimately what we're talking about, the usability of your website and how can we make this better. And the other thing we need to think about then is the fact that there's a lot of competition out there. And we were talking about this with Alex earlier, just before with Joe and I before we just got on the call, that business nowadays doesn't have borders. I'm excited to be talking with you all in Arlington. I'm here in Northern Virginia, I live out in Reston, come into Arlington all the time. But the reality is, in a global world, you have more competition. And a really great example of this is a website called Doximity. It's a social network for doctors, and they have more than 500,000 members. Now, keep in mind that the American Medical Association only has 234,000 members. That means a for-profit platform has twice as many active members than the actual official association of doctors. There's all this competition out there, and it's competition not just in your own backyard, but it's around the world now. You also have new competition coming up. One of my favorite stories and sites I like to talk about is a site called Teachers Pay Teachers. My wife is a second grade teacher at Wolf Trap Elementary in Vienna, Virginia, although right now she's in the other room teaching her second grade students. Teachers Pay Teachers is a site where teachers create materials, they upload it, and you can download resources, you can download class materials. My wife spends, because I do our taxes, I look that up, I'm like, how much does she spend on this? She spends $350 a year on this website. $350 a year that she pays to Teachers Pay Teachers, and she does not belong to the NEA. So that's where that competition is going, okay? You also have, if you're an organization that's providing education and information, there's more education at everyone's fingertips right now. If you want to learn something, then you go to lynda.com. I took a course a couple months ago. You want to kill a few hours learning some ideas, you watch a TED Talk. If your kids are having problems with math, you sign on to Khan Academy. You don't necessarily go find a teacher. So this education is all at our fingertips. So let's start by thinking, as we look at this, let's start by understanding our users' world, because it ultimately is about our users and the people that are coming to our site. So a couple things to understand. As I mentioned, we don't spend a lot of time looking at our own sites, and we talked about the plethora of sites that people are looking at. And Jacob Nielsen is one of the gods of web usability, and one of his laws is the fact that users spend most of their time on other websites. So that means they've looked at 30 or 40 websites before they come to your site and they come to do something. Part of what that means is the fact that we need to make sure our websites are acting and behaving in the way that other websites are. Think of an example. When we used to go to office buildings and we go and we walk into an office, we come down the elevator, we would step off the elevator and have that quick, like, I don't know which way I'm going. This elevator is weird, or you get in and the buttons are on the wrong side. That kind of disconnect for a person using a website creates cognitive dissonance for them. It makes the website harder for them to use. The other thing we want to think about is the fact that voice search is on the rise. This is a stat from Mary Meeker, who does an annual report on internet trends. I tried to find if she had an updated one, but let's admit it, I mean, how many of you all, show of hands, how many of you have Alexas and Alexas or Google Home, or you use Siri? Don't answer me, Siri. She's on my desk, don't answer. Don't pick up, she picked up. See, just like that. But more and more people are using voice search and image search for searches. Little things like, I'm in the kitchen, I'm like, hey Siri, what temperature should I cook salmon to? Apparently she's gonna tell me 165. Okay.
I found this on the web. For what temperature should I cook salmon to?
There came my answer, just like that. But more and more people are looking for that information, and they're using voice search for that. Okay, we're getting lazy as that. Let me close this back up. Whoop, I clicked in the wrong place. The other thing is we have more and more apps on our phones. On the average user has 37 apps installed on their phone. The phone really becomes their primary device. Now, an interesting thing that we've noticed on the web, thanks to COVID and everyone being at home, we're seeing web traffic from mobile devices decrease and web traffic from desktop devices increase. But that's a way to think about how people are using your website, how are they coming in, but there's a lot of competition around that. And then the next thing is to think about within how people use the web is the fact that our next generation of users are going to be what I call mobile natives. I'm of the age where they're like, oh, you kids grew up with the internet. You're a digital native. You know how to use technology. The next generation coming up is going to be their first computer that they used was their phone. The go-to computer that they use is their phone. This is actually a photo of my oldest kid who's now a freshman in college, and this photo was taken when they were a sophomore in high school. And yes, they are there on their phone doing homework, not texting their friends. And you can see from their handwriting, that's very nice handwriting that they have there. But these kids are using mobile devices. And if you think about how professionals are using it, we work with a lot of medical organizations. If you're a nurse in a clinical setting, your go-to device for looking something up is going to be your phone, not a desktop computer, because you can carry that with you into the patient's room as you find information. We do a lot of work with associations, but this also applies true for other organizations, nonprofits, if you're a business that's selling services. And as we point out to our association clients, that on average, and this is a study that we did a few years ago, 40% of members visit their association website only a couple times a year. So I'm gonna fess up here. I'm a member of ASAE, the American Society for Association Executives. Yes, there actually is an association for associations. How meta is that? I pay my annual dues, about $400 a year. I use the site maybe 2 or 3 times a year to pay my dues, to look a couple things up. I volunteer on a committee. So as you take a look at your analytics on your site, and hopefully you all have Google Analytics installed, we can talk about that later. Take a look at how often are people coming back. So what this means is that impression when someone comes in on those couple times a year has to be spot on, has to be really important and really aligned with your goals as you take a look at that. The other thing to remember when you think about how someone comes to your website and is using your site, remember you don't always have control over that user's journey. I like to say for all the kvetching and discussions and meetings we'll have about your homepage, it is actually the least important page on your website. Because the reality is people are going to be landing in on other pages. This is some statistics out of Google Analytics for one of our clients, the American Association of Endodontists. If you've had a root canal, you've met their members. I can also honestly say when people say it's worse than a root canals are actually not as bad nowadays thanks to AAE's work. But you'll notice that the homepage, which is item number 5, only gets just under 5% of the first page views in the site. It's number 5 in the landing pages. More people are seeing these pages ranked above them on their first visit to the site. Only 5% of the people are seeing the homepage as the first page. This might be true with your site as well. So why is that? So we actually mapped out for AAE how people are coming in. In their case, like they're at the dentist. The dentist goes, oh, you need a root canal. You're like, oh, crap, what's a root canal? Pick out the phone, Google root canal. AAE.org comes up as the #1 site. Search in Google, you land, it's on a page about what is a root canal, and that's the point where you have them. So those landing pages become important because you want to think about what is the journey? What is that person going to see next? Where are they going to navigate to next? And what's that look like? And how do you convert them to what it is you want them to do? Be it sign up for a newsletter or purchase a product or something like that. My example earlier about restaurants, typically if you Google a restaurant, the menu page might be one of the pages that comes up first. So what is that user seeing when they look at the menu page? Is it just simply a PDF that's boring, or do you maybe have some specials or some updated information? Thinking about those pages as people come into the site becomes really important. The other thing to remember is that visit is fast. HubSpot is a marketing automation platform, and they did a survey that said 55% of users will spend less than 15 seconds on a site. So think about that. When you're shopping and you're going around, you're in, you're out, boom, boom. And most people will make that decision within 10 seconds. Am I going to stay? Am I going to click? Is the site relevant for me? Do you have the information I want? How is that going to convert? So that becomes really important. And one of the things we have to think about within that is the fact that people aren't going to read, okay? My wife accuses me of not listening to her. Well, the reality is your web users are not listening to you. Steve Krug wrote a great book called Don't Make Me Think. Highly recommend it for anyone managing a website. And he has a quote that he says, when creating sites, we act as though people are going to pore over every page and every word. But if we're lucky, they're going to glance at each page. They're going to read some of the text, and they're just going to click on the first thing that catches their interest. So what that means is that of all the images on content and words that we put on a page, at best, people are going to read 28% of the words on a page. If you're lucky, that's if you're lucky, but 20% is more likely. So we have to write for them. So how can we look at our websites in a different way? How can we turn this paradigm around and change this conversation? I like to say it starts with saving the day for your users. Make the website about your users. Who is coming to the site? Because newsflash, when someone comes to your website, it's not about you. It's not about like, hey, here's how awesome I am. It's about me. When I come to a website, I have a problem I'm trying to solve. I have an issue I'm trying to address. I have something that I'm interested in about you. That's great. I'll find out eventually, but answer my needs first. Okay. So one of the first ways to do this is to put together what we call user personas. These are basically fictitious users that represent the people that will be coming to the website. So since I was using AAE earlier, I'll go ahead and keep using them as an example. So you might have, on this side, on the left side, I have some example of members of endodontists. For example, someone that's been loyal, paid his dues every single year. He's coming back time after time. Someone that is in private practice, they're just using a few information. Someone that's maybe new to the industry, how they're coming in. And on the right side, I have two personas for patients. Someone who's like, oh man, I got a root canal. What do I do now? What is a root canal? How do I pay for it? Is it going to hurt? And proactive Paula is like someone who, yep, I'm taking care of my dental health. I have my every 6 months with my dentist. Everything's cleared up. I know where I'm going. Mapping that out and putting those personas together. One of the things this really helps you do at that point then is take your own prejudices out of the process, because we make assumptions when it's typical. I do the same thing, and I really try hard not to. But if you talk to someone and they say, how do you think most people use the web? They will answer with how they use the web. And that's very different. So once you have that, you then want to go ahead and start a conversation with the user. Everyone's going to have different levels of understanding of what it is you do. What is your, and we call this the conversation spectrum. You can use each page and each piece of content to guide that user to the next step and have a little bit deeper engagement with them. So within my example of AAE and the root canal, Oblivious is like, my tooth really hurts and my dentist said I have a root canal. I don't even know what a root canal is. I'll be honest, before I worked with them, I thought they went under the tooth, like down into the bones and stuff like that. I didn't even know, okay? That's Oblivious. Curious is like, oh, this is what a root canal procedure is. They take out the, I won't go into it, it's kind of gory, but this is what a root canal is, so on and so forth. Oh, my dentist said he can do a root canal. Can he really do that? Oh, I should probably go to an endodontist. Now I'm in the intrigue level. And then invested is like, oh, how do I find an endodontist? How do I search? And then ultimately, in AAE's case, let's use their find an endodontist tool. This conversation exists in every one of your websites and every one of your organizations. All the way from, it's for anything you do. A classic example I like to use is, my dryer is broken, how do I repair a heating element? That takes me to a YouTube video, which takes me to a parts list, which takes me to a store where I can buy that, which takes me to instructions. So what is that conversation as someone is journeying through your website? And the next thing to think about that is, how do we drive action with that? I tell my clients all the time, read my resources is not an action. We want users to do something. So give them a next step. That might be a next step in the conversation. It might be a next step towards donate. It might be a next step to purchase or sign up for a newsletter. But use your content and that journey from your persona to drive the users to that next step. And that helps them satisfy their needs while converting into your needs. So with that background set up, we're like, oh, wow, that's a lot, Ray. Whew. Hey, now how do I take a look at my website? And this is where we're going to get into the fun part. as if this first part wasn't that fun already, okay? So the jargon for this is called a heuristic evaluation. And a heuristic is just simply we've agreed to a set of rules, this is where we're looking at, we are evaluating on various things, and then we're gonna evaluate the website. I do have a heuristic checklist that Alex put into the handouts. I'm going to be going through that in a little bit. You're welcome to download that as you go through that, but that's a heuristic checklist that we put together as a way that we evaluate websites. The Nielsen Norman group put together this list of 10 questions that are really good things to take a look at. So let's go through these. Does your website keep things simple? Is it easy to understand? Do I know what this is about? Do users feel informed? Remember I said it's about the user, not you. Are you speaking their language? I, by the way, have and Joe calls me out on this about every other day, I have a no jargon rule in our company. If I actually drop jargon or with a client, you're allowed to throw something at me. Thank goodness we're all remote now. I'm not getting hit with bricks and balls, but are you speaking their language? So if you're using jargon, are you speaking, and I have a no jargon rule because that speaks to insiders. And you want to make sure that people that are new at that top of the conversation funnel, that they are able to understand what you're doing. Is your website consistent? Do you have like the same color buttons as you're going through that? Do you provide, this checklist talks about control and freedom to explore where people can navigate as you go through that. Is it helpful? I've kind of simplified this down into a few other areas. So let's take a look at appearance and design. What are those first impressions that are important? Am I communicating what's going on in the site? Does that set the tone for my organization? Content. Users have come to your site for a reason. I came in looking for information about a subject. How is the content here? Navigation. Can people get around through your site? Do you have a navigation structure, headers and menus that make sense? Do you have clicks to things, so on and so forth? Efficiency and accessibility, really important. So how does the site perform? Does it load quickly? Does it load well on a mobile device? One of the things we want to consider out is ADA compliance and 508 compliance for can people that need help, can they take a look at your website? Can they understand your website? So, and I could talk about that later on. That could be a whole other webinar. And I mentioned the mobile experience. Can people take a look at your website? And can they use that in the moment as they go through the website and find information of what they're looking for? So how do you do this? So the heuristic checklist is the first step. We have that as a download. If I was doing this person, I'd say look on your table. I'm going to walk through a couple of these tools. UX Check is a awesome plugin that you can add into Chrome and find information. The Web AIM accessibility tool, if you're really concerned about 508 compliance, you can put your website into this tool. It will tell you all the things that your site is not compliant with. Warning, is going to give you a lot of lists. It's going to find every single thing, so go through that. Two of the biggest ones, though, are the page insights from Google and the mobile friendly test. So you run your site through those tools. It will tell you how fast is your site loading, how can you make it faster, is your site mobile friendly. Now, those become really important from a search engine optimization perspective. Search engine optimization is how do I make my site show up in Google for certain terms as I go through that. Google, first of all, will decrease if your site is not mobile friendly. It's going to push your site down in rankings. And if your site loads slowly, it's going to push your site down in rankings. So those are some things to look at. I also have some other page speed tests as we go through that to take a look at. So who should review and how do you do this? So one way to do this and what we do when we're working on a heuristic evaluation for client site is take a focused amount of time, put together a use case for a scenario. If I'm a person, if I'm this type of person coming to the site trying to do X, let's get in that mindset and go through and review the site and pull the checklist up. That's a really great way to do it on your own. Give yourself the mental headspace to do that. Maybe you have some staff who don't use the site on a regular basis, or you have trusted friends or colleagues. Ask them to take a look at it and give them the checklist. How would you say? What would you take a look at? Does this make sense? And your last thing is to hire an external consultant. But I'll be honest, you don't really need to do that. Use the checklist, go through what I've given you today. There's a lot you can do on your own as far as understanding how to do a heuristic review. And the goal is to find things that you can improve and make better and make consistent baby steps going forward rather than throwing the whole thing out and having to start all over again. Which, I mean, as a web firm, I'm okay with that, but I'd rather save your money and have you make small steps going forward. So what to review? A few different levels you can take a look at this, and this is really going to depend on what your goals. If you want to review your site and how you want to, and what your goals are out of that, and how much effort do you have. I'm going to start on the right with specific pages. So if you are taking this on breaking this up into chunks, say back to our example, I am this type of user coming to the site to do X. Look at those specific pages. Target 3 to 5 pages, your landing pages out of your analytics that you want to take a look at. How do you make those better? Review those, make those better, and do those as they go along. As I like to say, you're familiar with the proverb, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you make a website better? One page at a time. So if you can commit to making your site better one page at a time, over time you will make the entire site better. Or you can look at a section. This might be a bigger lift for you, but say, okay, I'm going to work on this section. I'm going to go through it. How do users have that? Align your goals within that, or start at the top. Maybe you're doing this to satisfy stakeholders who are like, okay, I just want the website to look better, and my homepage, your boss has come in and said the homepage sucks, make it look better. So then in that case, start at the top, think through those user journeys, and compare them to your site goals as well of, am I accomplishing these goals? So that's a lot. Whew. Okay, so let's review some sites. I'm going to jump in. I did have 2 volunteers offered up their site. Jim Hauser with Educate Fit and Christina Armstrong's with Bridges to Org. So I'm going to take my computer out of screen share. I'm going to pull some things up here as well. Jim, are you on the call today?
Yes, Jim, I think you are. I can take you off mute.
Yeah, let's take Jim off mute real quick.
Okay, just a second, taking you off mute, Jim.
Jim, I should have asked if you're okay being off mute before I called on you.
Yeah, no, I'm okay. And actually, my keyboard was showing up. I'm on my phone, and my keyboard was showing up at the bottom. So at least I got rid of the numbers by having you take me off mute.
All good. So why don't we start by, why don't you tell us a little bit about your company and who you, before we pull your site up for everyone, and who you all work with and how you help them.
So it's a newer firm, started this year. I'm doing college admission counseling, and I just got my certificate from UCLA to do that. I'm a 30-year plus education professional, but new to this particular part of the industry. And I know I need to make some improvements with my website. The feedback I'm getting is that it's written well, but it's written at a high level and is not like family friendly. And I also think it could be visually simpler.
Okay.
So that's kind of my own critique, and I don't know like what all you found.
And I actually haven't looked yet. I was going to do this.
Okay, all right. Okay.
This is the proverbial flying without a net for here.
Okay.
And so, do you work with the students or the parents or both?
Both. Yeah. Okay. And so this is kind of different if this is being done in a school setting, they would be working just with the students. But what independent education consultants do is they work with the family as a whole.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So with that said, I'm gonna pull your site up here. So I have this loaded here. Before we dive in, I'm gonna show you all a couple quick tools that I have up here. For those of you that are techie, so if you use Chrome, I'm a big believer in using Chrome extensions. So I have a tool here called UX Check. This allows me, and I've actually updated. It comes default with the Nielsen Norman heuristics, and I updated my version with our heuristics. So we're going to talk through, and I'm going to show you some of how this works as we go through that. If you're really geeky, if I have any tech people on the call, we use Wappalizer, which it tells me what your site is built with, so I can see that you're using Wix to manage your site. So it's perfectly good. And then if I'm really being geeky, I have a tool called Google Tag Assistant that if I reload your site, is going to tell me if you have Google Analytics installed, which it looks like you do not. So we can talk about that. So that would be a first thing that you'd want to start off with. But as you go to more and more sites, you will see more tags firing in around that. So I think the first thing first to take a look at that I would offer up is, first of all, when I take a look at the navigation, you've actually started off with one of the first things that a couple things I see within here. So you have the home button here, but also a universal, and this might be within the Wix settings, a universal thing within navigation is the fact that the logo should be clickable to return to home. Okay, that should be a first thing. So I'm going to go ahead and do a UX check thing, and I'm going to show you all how this is used for navigation. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to add a piece. Navigation logo should be clickable. Okay. This, by the way, when we're done, is going to create a Word document that I can download and send to you as well. Okay.
Okay.
As I take a look at your navigation, you started off with about and services and resources. And that's okay as people take a look at that. But I think the other thing is we take a look in your area here. You have a slideshow of images, but your copy is over here on the left. One of the things is to understand is that people read in what's called an F-shaped pattern. Their eyes land up here in the top right corner. They scroll across. For all the discussion around this type of information, the hero images, people don't always pay attention to it. They skip down a little bit and they come across. But the key is that they scroll down the left-hand side. So I think one of the first steps would be to move this actually over to the left side. That would be a first baby step. Or take a look at even making this a little bit shorter. So as I mentioned, I have a freshman in college. So I've recently been through this. So the concern for parents is, is your kid going to get into school? Put yourself back in the kids, in that parent and the kids thing. Am I going to get into school? Am I going to find the right school? Am I going to get a scholarship? Those are those are really the big questions our parents are having. So I think from a messaging perspective, it would make sense to, I think this is true, and this is definitely an overwhelming process. And I think you can just say that Educate Fit Consulting makes it easier. Boom. This is hard. It's going to confuse the hell out of you. We make it easier. Simplify it down that way. And to your point around that. I think that's quite frankly then where the services and the navigation would come in. So if we take a look at services, you have some nice headings, packages for freshmen and sophomore, packages for juniors. As you take a look at that, you have your contact us button. I would probably stack these. Let's go ahead and take a look at how this looks on a mobile device. So if I resize my browser, so you can see right now, if I were on a phone, I wouldn't even be reading all of this information. So I'm going to go ahead and flag this as in a general area. I'm going to come back of consider responsive design. And let me pull that back up.
And I'm sure I know that Wix has mobile templates, so that'd be a good thing to take a look at. The other thing is, I think what would make that a little easier to read in the appearance and design, I would recommend stacking the stack headings vertically. Probably do like packages for freshmen and sophomores, and then junior and seniors, depending on who you where your sweet spot is working with of putting that information together. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's take a look at that. Cancel this. I'm going to close this up real quick. Okay, so you have some general resources, some information. This is a great resource, by the way. Totally used that one. So I think one of the things from a content perspective, within the layout within here, is that this to the eyes just appears as a wall of text. And I think it's, and I'm going to offer this as a perspective of a parent of an LGBTQ child. If you're a parent looking at this, like my worry is, am I finding a school that's safe for my child? And am I finding a school where my child will be welcomed? Which, based on some of the direct mail that they got as a rising student, I was like, y'all did not check your mailing list quite correctly, because why are you mailing to this kid? But that's a whole other topic. I'm like, but so I think so this is a perfect example of why a parent, why is a parent looking for this information? What are they looking for? What are the things they should look for in identifying an LGBTQ friendly school? But be it their campus pride, a checklist of how do you know, do they have a pride center on campus, so on and so forth. What are their policies, which campus pride does very nicely. I think from a content perspective, and I'll use this here. I'm going to just put and that really is a big thing within that. Personalize that experience within them.
Ray, when you talk about wall of text, I don't know if you want to show like an example of an alternative. How should it be kind of broken up to who to give to the user?
Yeah, good point, Joe. So I would use as an example, so if I was going to lay this out, I'm just going to go ahead and cheat, and then I'll pull up Microsoft Word. Let me make this a little bit bigger so we can all see it. And sorry, campus pride index. So I will go period, include those line breaks within there. So if this is a key statement, this is a key statement you want to have, because people read shorter and shorter paragraphs. As you take a look at that, are you familiar with the Flesch test for reading comprehension?
No.
So there's a test that's given in reading comprehension of, we hear about like 3rd, 4th, 6th grade content, and generally you want to simplify down unless you're talking about complex content. But that would be a good opportunity to run your content through that. Paragraphs, but it makes it a little bit more scannable for reading. Likewise, I would say, adding a headline of like, parent LGBTQ students should blah 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 blah, whatever you do, but then make that a little bit bigger, bold as a subhead or something like that as people take a look at that. So that'd be a good opportunity to talk to that kind of things. Does that help you out with that a little bit?
I think so.
Okay. I will definitely be pouring over your site because I have a rising junior. I have a junior that we're getting ready to start this as well.
All right.
So, Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Let me go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and go back to UX check. And so for those of you that are following along, if you hit export when you're done, you get the end of your evaluation. It takes, I was clearly doing this with some other people, but it takes a screenshot. You see some notes, and this is a good way if you're doing an internal thing to just kind of like document and get all those photos and find issues that you want to find as you take a look at them. Cool. Thank you for being brave and offering up your site. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jim.
Cool. And then our next one that we had was Christina with Bridges to Independence. Is Christina on the? She is.
Yes,
Christina,
she is. I think she mentioned that she might have some technical difficulties with the mute, but
okay.
we'll try it and then we can just kind of go from there.
Awesome. Okay.
Christina, you should be off mute now.
Cool.
Can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Okay,
Thank you for
great.
joining us, Christina.
Thanks for reviewing our website.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Bridges to Independence and who you are talking to and why someone will be coming to your website.
Bridges to Independence is a local nonprofit here in Arlington, Virginia, and we work to move families out of homelessness and into stable and independent futures. We had built a website a couple of years ago, though it's not very user-friendly on the back end. And we're in the process of thinking about what a new website could look like. But it was interesting to hear you say, you know, improve maybe what you have rather than scrap it and start again. So I'm excited to get your feedback on our website.
Okay, awesome. So let's go ahead and run a couple of my quick tests that we take a look at. So I see that you're running WordPress. That is great. WordPress is an awesome content management system. Full disclosure, we do about 99% of our work in WordPress. I see that. Let's take a look at your tags that you're running. Let me enable that and reload this. By the way, did I completely jargon drop for everyone when I mentioned Google Analytics? And you can call me out for it, it's okay. For those of you that are not aware, Google does offer an analytics package that allows you to add some code to your site, and it completely tracks where everyone is going in your site, what pages people are looking at, how long they're spending, how they got there, etc. It is free. That is why it is totally awesome. Of course, it also means Google is using your data. And I see you have your Google Analytics tag installed. Yay! Okay, let's be honest. How often do you look at your analytics, though?
We just got a Google Ads grant. I don't know if that's the same thing, but we're just right now in the process of, we don't really know what Google Analytics are or how they work, but we've asked volunteers to help us figure it out.
Okay, I could do a whole other hour on that. You have my information. I'm more than willing to do. I am pathologically helpful, and you have an awesome mission. Let's connect, and I'll walk you through Google Analytics. I can easily spend some time doing that. But what Google Analytics is going to show you is, like I said, how people are coming to your site, how many pages they're taking a look at, what they're coming in on, etc. Google Grants, for those of you that don't know, that you mentioned that, I'm going to give a great big plug out for Google Grants. When you're looking at a site, I'm going to use, let me come back here to Chrome. I'll use as an example because we're managing this for AAE. Of course, they don't have an ad running now. We should have it running. There we go. Nope, it's not popping up for me. I clicked on it way too many times. But you see these ads that show up here, and you see an ad located in Google. Google, once you go through the application process with Google, they will give nonprofits $10,000 worth of credits to spend on pay-per-click advertising in a given month. And that's a great way to drive donations as people are looking at information. I think it's also really important thinking about your users. It'll be awesome for Christina to know of your people looking for help, how many of them are using the web and how they're finding you. So that brings me back to my question. Is your site geared towards people looking for help, or are you geared towards donations?
Right now, we would like it to be both. Right now, I think it's more geared towards donations, and we've talked about how can it really be a resource also for the community.
Okay, awesome. So using my checklist, which I have here with my appearance and design, primary goal, purpose is clear. You have that communicated very nicely here. of what you do, helping get people from homeless into stable, independent futures. One of the things I like is you have a photo in here, a nice people photos are engaging. People take a look at them. They support the mission as you go through that. Across your top, your navigation, you still have the home button up here, which I would rather see the logo up in the top area up here because that's a little bit more standard. But you have the who we are, what we do. I would just flip these two in your navigation. What we do, because if someone's coming in that they're looking like, oh, is this an organization I like? You know, coming around, then who we are, maybe move that over, which in WordPress, there's a 2-minute change to do. Volunteer, beautiful, you have a call to action. And what I really like is your donate now. This is clearly your key. If I'm looking at your site, to me, the key action here is donate now. And you've done a great job of differentiating that and making that a different color and driving people in as you go through that. You've highlighted your volunteer profiles up top. So what I'm not seeing right here is what I'd love to see is an easy conversion for if you need help, click here, or to donate, click here. Like I'd like to see, not quite the big red button, but maybe in your case, the big orange button around that so that you have that clear action coming off of it. I will point out, by the way, for those of you that have social media things on your links on your website, we generally do not put these on our clients' websites because the reason being, as soon as someone clicks on it, I'm going to Twitter, and Lord knows, once you're into Twitter, that's like an hour of your day that's lost and you're not coming back. So use your social media to drive content back to the website, back into conversion pages. Okay. Christina, which do you think is the most important page in your site? Let's deep dive into a specific one.
I think right now, volunteering.
Volunteering, awesome. So perfect. So we're going to start off with a couple things we like as we take a look at the review. Become a volunteer. You have action-oriented headline, very nice there. You have your button that's called out over here, easily for become a volunteer. Notice my cursor went straight from here to here, so I'm interested in that. That's kind of where my eye is going to go. We talked about writing about breaking it up and not having a wall of text. So from a readability and a content thing, one of my things in the content checklist is content easy to scan. You've got that welcome, types of service, and what most users' eyes are going to do is going to go welcome. They're going to read the subheads, and I'm not going to even read this paragraph. I'll be honest with you. If I'm interested in volunteering, you had me a hello. I'm going to come straight to types of volunteer service. Okay. And I'm going to read through these with a click here to learn more, and I might become the volunteer application. Please complete our online application, your volunteer application. Click here to sign up. So this is nice and readable for scanning. I like that. You're become a volunteer. Let's run this through. I'm going to go ahead and use the Google mobile friendly test. Let's go ahead and run this page through here and see how does it render. And while it's running that, let me see there. So I'm running that mobile test. So your navigation was easily identifiable. You didn't have any a lot of pop-ups, and this is the kind of thing that I could spend like hours and hours on. Your text and colors are consistent. I like how you're using this green. You have a fairly simple color palette, and using those photos. That's really awesome within that. Taking a look at that. Keep going, Google. Go Google, go Google. And I have other options, again, thinking about that journey, if I'm interested in individual volunteering or group volunteering as we take a look at that. So time for a break, monthly bingo nights, you've got some information, some calls to action. The other thing that I think is really important down here, you have this information of have questions. Don't, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to put this information at the bottom of the page. People do scroll to the bottom and they do find this information, so having this information down here is important. And then you also have your credibility with your guide star information around for fundraising. And I also love you have nice 3 calls to action right at the bottom so no one gets there. That's perfect. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So what does Google say about being mobile friendly? Yes. So this you can actually see. So Google gives you a report. Here's what it would look like. It says it's mobile friendly. So here's some resources. And if there are any details, it gives you some information. You can hand this off to a developer to take a look at. Okay. Does that help?
It does. Thank you. I think you just saved several thousands of dollars for our mission.
Awesome. Awesome. So let me see, are there any other areas of my checklist I want to check on? Yeah, I think I think from the home page, having that easy, couple easy buttons, particularly for someone that comes in on that mobile device. If you think about it, like I need help, I'm in. I have a friend of mine who's a social worker out here in Fairfax County. She helps connect people with resources like this. So when she's meeting, she picks up her phone. So test that in the moment experience of what are people taking a look at. To go through that. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got a little bit of time left. Were there any other questions or areas we wanted to dive into as we go through this? And I'll put my contact information up here. I'm going to leave this up like this so I can jump out. But if you have any follow-up questions or things you're interested in, please feel free to reach out. As I said, I'm pathologically helpful. So.
No, this has been great. Thank you so much, Ray. This presentation was so, I love the hands-on learning that we were able to do today. So thank you. I had a couple questions. One is from Mr. Williams, and his question is, what is your take on WordPress versus Wix website? Does it really matter? I know a lot of small businesses kind of do the Wix, and it's easy to do yourself, but do you have thoughts?
So caveat, like I said, I work for a web design firm. 99% of our work is done in WordPress. I love WordPress as a CMS. It is totally awesome. It scales very nicely from small nonprofit to multi-million-dollar organization. I find though that the best WordPress experiences are set up by a professional developer to set it up, apply the information, and so on and so forth. So if you have the budget to work with a WordPress developer and a WordPress designer to help you with that usability, that is a great way to go. A benefit of WordPress, if you care about search engine optimization, is keep in mind 66% of the web runs on WordPress. And WordPress content gets indexed by Google a lot faster. We have, I'll use a good example. We have a client site with a find a provider directory, and the pages are in WordPress, and the WordPress pages, the WordPress directory pages are outranking the provider's actual websites in Google. That being said, the build your own tools, Weebly, Wix, and Squarespace are the 3 that I recommend, are very good. They're very cost effective. You can start a Weebly site at $8 a month. You can add tools on for e-commerce. They apply SSL for you. They're very good, but it's a matter of picking the right template and then going within that. So it really depends on your budget and what your goal of your website is. If your website is merely a brochure to someone follow up after meeting, then probably Weebly or Wix, Squarespace is build your own is fine. If you're trying to convert and drive business and revenue through it, it's worth the investment.
Right.
So
you kind of get what you pay for it, that whole.
You do, yes, it really is. You get what you pay for. And I'll also say when it comes to WordPress developers, you get what you pay for. You can find someone that's going to charge you $25 an hour, and you're going to get what you pay for. Or, take a look at the developer's experience. Have they built sites like yours? What kind of strategy do they offer? How do they work within that? And go from there.
That's good advice. Good advice. Awesome. And folks, forgive me, I didn't mention this earlier, but if you have a question, feel free to just raise your hand or put it in the chat box. But one thing that's been on my mind, because it's something that kind of impacts our kind of web design, is there such a thing as too much content on your website?
I've gone back and forth on this one. So keep in mind, like we do a lot of work with associations, and an association website is like a hoarder's house of content. Like we regularly, like we're working on a site right now that's 10,000 pages. Okay.
You haven't come to government yet.
I know. I haven't come to government yet. They're even worse. And in government, you're like, oh, we have to have everything. Yes, there's too much content. So look at it like when you're, for those of you that have teenagers and their teenagers trying to find that textbook on the floor in the room that's covered up by all the laundry and whatever dishes they took up there, you're just making it that much harder as you go within that. The other thing when you're thinking about content is based on how your website is loading. The CMS is ultimately a database of holding all your content with software running it in. The bigger that database gets, the more the software has to work. So you can actually impact your performance then and make that make it harder to go. In looking at a page of how much content is on a page, there's a there's a rule from Steve Krug's book, Don't Make Me Think. It says take your content, write it, cut it in half, and then cut it in half again. Because as we said, at best, people are only going to read 28% of the words on the page. So they're going to scan through and they go through that. Now, that's also, you need to think about the user journey of what someone is going through and what they're taking a look at. So when someone comes into the home page, they look for information, and users follow what's called a scent trail. For those of you who have dogs, that follow them through the dog park, watching the other dogs, following their scents. Users do the same thing going through a website. Oh, this looks interesting, I'll click here. Oh, this looks interesting. And they get a little bit more information as they go. And then once they find that big piece of information, it might be a big 2,000 word page, they literally lean back and consume that, or they download it. So as you look at the pages getting to that information, you want to think small, have enough information to lead to the next person, and then on the ultimate destination itself, that's when it's okay to have a lot of words.
Gotcha. That's good.
So, for those of you that are struggling with too much content on your website, this is where Google Analytics comes in helpful. We do this all the time. We will run the analytics for the past 2 years of content, and anything that has not been viewed more than X number of times in the past 2 years gets shoved away. Your website is not a filing cabinet.
Right. There's better ways to archive it, I guess.
There's better ways to archive it. There's cheaper ways to archive it as well. Right. Website hosting is more expensive than a Dropbox account.
Right. Okay. Well, and then, I always talk about, it's like, okay, what, this content from 6 years ago, is it still relevant? Can it be repurposed? Like
exactly.
If we did, like, I think of like our little starting a business webinars from 2015, like, that content's still the same, but like, could we slice and dice it to make it juicier, or how can we repurpose that type?
Or update it. A really good technique with that is to take that content from a webinar and break it up into some blog posts of things to be thinking about now, and repurpose it. It's it's like reruns that you haven't seen. They're brand new to you the first time you see them, just because everyone else saw it. So how can you break that up? How can you repurpose it? And if you have pages on the web where, like, you've done, for example, like a review of something, or you have updated information, it's okay to update it and then add a note like this page was updated on this date with the following information. That tells users that people are that you're continuing to update and have that information. So I was just a good example. I was just looking for some headphones. I just got some very nice headphones. I was reading reviews, and the reviews I was reading, they were updated like, this is updated with the latest information from 2020.
Right.
So that's a good way to look at that.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, and thank you for everybody for joining us today. This was a really deep dive, and it's exactly what I was hoping for. So thank you for Joe and Ray for helping put this together and kind of provide this content to the small business community here in Arlington, and our, obviously our nonprofit partners as well. So we thank you. This will be recorded. Momentarily, let me just get the closed captions on, and it will be up on YouTube at the end of the program. But we look forward to seeing you at future programs. And Joe and Ray, it's an open invitation. Please come back if you're interested in doing something again. We'd love to have you again. So
Thank you much. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out.
Sounds good. Take care, everybody.
Awesome.
Take care.
Bye, guys. Have a good weekend.